Hi, I'm Tess,
And I'm Sarah.
and this is the Basically Bookish podcast.
We just finished reading Blood Over Brighthaven by ML Wang, and we're so excited to talk to you about it.
This review will be spoiler free at first, but we will get into spoilers and specific details in the later part of the episode.
Don't worry, we'll warn you before we jump into any spoilers.
Before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a comment or review wherever you're tuning in. We'd love to hear from you.
You can find us on all social media platforms at Basically Bookish Pod.
Blood Over Brighthaven is a dark academia slash fantasy novel that revolves around our main character, Sciona, who's the first woman admitted into the High Magistry, which is sort of the top tier of government and religion in the city of Turan. With the help of a janitor who becomes her assistant, they uncover dark truths about their city and the true cost of magic. And let's just start out with our star ratings. What did you give this one?
Sure. This is just one of those books that, again, found me at the perfect moment. I'm going to give it 4.5 stars because I wanted more, and I'll get into that. But with that said, take notes. This book is very detailed.
I'm with you. I'm going to give it 4.5 as well. I'm so excited. I like that we're on the same page with this one, and I
Yeah.
wonder what your criticisms are going to be.
Yeah.
Very excited. So let's talk a little bit about the themes of this book.
Sure, yeah. I feel like this book is what I think Fourth Wing, specifically Onyx Storm, wishes it was, but without dragons, obviously. But the long-standing complex magic system with dark and mysterious roots that protects or provides but serves as a conduit for complacency while exploiting an unknown resource or group, that trope. Imperialism, colonialism. ML Wang does this well. I think this book may be my first true dark academia. It was also forthcoming, nearly spelling out every nook and cranny, and a little heavy handed at times. And it was quite a bit different from Wuthering Heights, which I feel like could benefit from a reading manual. So,
Absolutely.
what did you think?
Yes. So the themes, they definitely touched on colonialism, sexism, racism, just like everything you were saying. I also thought capitalism to an extent as well. And I did really enjoy this. I think that you put it really beautifully that it is kind of what Fourth Wing wishes that it was. That was a beautiful summary.
In some ways, I think I was like, oh, I wish I had seen parts of this in Onyx Storm where I was really interested and wrapped up by the details of how things were put together. It felt very intentionally placed in this book.
Yes. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the characters again without getting into any spoilers.
Sure. I really don't think I have ever related on an intellectual level to a book character in this way. When she said that she barely existed outside of the laboratory, I felt that. Her colleagues' assumption of inferiority, the misogyny within academia, the small mindedness of so called peers that can derail lives and futures is put on full force. Sciona is unlikable, racist, and includes a large dose of internalized patriarchy. It's uncomfortable to see the world through her eyes and to hear her thoughts. Yeah, I found Sciona to be a deeply conflicted character, and that's probably in large part to some of my own projection. She reminded me of this quote, which was, "A free woman in an unfree society will be a monster." And that's by Angela Carter. But as for Tommel, and I don't want to get ahead, so your turn. How did you feel about Sciona?
Yes, so I kind of have the same feelings. I really liked that we had this unlikable narrator who is also extremely complex. I like that we get to see her change and grow, but we also do see all of those internalized isms that she is carrying with her. But I do feel that she feels like a real fleshed out character who is very much a product of her society, which I thought was very artistically done.
Right, exactly. And I feel like the author gave us two really good characters on either side of this conflict that were fleshed out, like you said. I related to Tommel on a spiritual level and related to Siona on an intellectual level, a conditioned level. And I found that having these two different sides of the story made the story deeply compelling.
I agree. I agree. And just like you were saying, I thought that there were some pretty well rounded secondary characters for the most part. I also thought that the character of Brigham,
Yeah.
which is Siona's mentor, I thought he was a very interesting character as well. Again, no spoilers, but I definitely I enjoyed them. I thought that the characters felt real, like real people.
Right. Yeah. And I have something to say about that. too as well, because they did feel very real. Everything felt very real.
Yes. Yeah.
What did you think of the world building?
Yeah, so I found it very smooth. I liked the academic setting. I think that it helped not feel like things were being info dumped to us. And I did feel immersed in the story.
Yeah, she thankfully spells out the very complex and detailed magical system to her aunt right off the
Mhm.
bat, and so that's very helpful. I wonder if that's a hallmark of true dark academia books, that they have to sort of spell it out to you in the beginning. A syllabus is required.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like one of the big hurdles to get it over through a lot of fantasy books is that world building and you're figuring
Right.
out who, what, where, why do we care, what's happening.
Right.
But I
Yeah,
definitely I wasn't taken out of the story when learning about the world.
right. Yeah, I felt like this is the book that you should read if you want all of your suspicions confirmed about the evil in the world, and you would also like to see something done about that. This is
Right.
the book for you.
Absolutely. If you are looking for a little bit of unhinged female rage, this might just
Hmm.
be exactly what you need.
Right. It takes a hard look at doctrine, the status quo, and complacency within patriarchy.
Absolutely. So you kind of touched on the magic system, and I did find that this magic system was very unique. It is a hard magic system, and let me just define a hard magic system really quickly. Okay, so a hard magic system is a fictional magic framework defined by strict, clearly explained rules, limitation, and costs that are understood by both the characters and the audience, versus a soft magic system, which is described as
Like Dorian.
kind of
Dorian's a soft magic system.
right.
What
Yeah, or
makes him
more.
what's? What's
Or
it? Yeah,
more.
it's
The
sort of a
power of
what's it.
truth.
They just pull something out of somewhere.
Exactly. Yes, as opposed to a soft magic system, which is a narrative approach where magic is mysterious, amorphous, and lacks clearly defined rules or limitations. So I thought that the fact that this did have such a hard, structured magic system where the rules are clearly defined, there's a cost, it's very rigid structure. I thought that that also kind of blended into the academic setting of everything, where everything felt very scientific. And again, which made this world feel like it could be very real and possible.
Right. Yeah. It was almost like coding. It kind of
Right.
reminded me of like computer coding because you've got,
Absolutely.
yeah, you've got like a object, a section, and then an action. It's sort of a mathematical component based magical system, which I've never seen before.
Yes, I thought it was really unique and I really loved it. Yes. So, any criticism that you might have had, just still without spoilers?
I don't know if this is a spoiler, but it's a white savior book to the final page.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I have heard and seen that, and I would agree. I would agree there a little bit. Yeah.
I mean,
She tried to kind of turn it around at like the last couple chapters there where there's a little bit more agency. But yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I did think it was also a little bit heavy-handed where
right.
she's just kind of ramming it over our heads. That's okay. Maybe that's what's needed. There is all of this discourse happening around Wuthering Heights, and maybe things just need to be spelled out a little bit.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, I agree. I think that, well, we'll get to that in just a moment, but I was going to say that I think it's a somewhat simplistic critique of modern times with technology thinly veiled as magic. I did find myself thinking of things in a less magical way than I do in some of our other magic books. I did feel like it was so close to home. And so that would be a critique of mine. If you're looking for something to pull you out of the world, this might keep you right in it. It's very analogous to things that you do in your daily life. I mean, even like an email, it's like very analogous to that.
I completely agree with that. There are a lot of times where it's just like, yep, this is how
This is
it all
my
works.
day. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
this
did that
is
yesterday.
right. Yeah, I also put that maybe I'm just a little bit jaded, but I do feel the resolution in the end doesn't lead to lasting change overall. Again, without spoilers. So,
Hmm.
is it fun? Again, I really enjoyed this book.
Very fun.
Almost a 5-star book. I
Right.
think it's an important one. I would definitely recommend it to people to read. But yeah, those are the criticisms that I have of it. And I like that we're kind of on the same page when it comes to that.
Yeah. So you would recommend it with any
Yeah, I think so.
confidence?
I mean,
Yeah.
not to just anybody, you know what I mean? Because I feel
Right.
like books are so specific to people, but it's a good one. If you kind of want to see the patriarchy burn down a little
Right.
bit and really like have somebody spell out what is wrong with our society, I think
Yeah. It touches on that intersectionality of all the different ways that people are approaching their life. Like I was saying, you ever just read a book and know it's exactly where I'm supposed to be? I feel like a lot of the books that we read here on the podcast come upon us exactly as I need them. Like, I'm just going to be frank, I needed this book during the Epstein file release. I don't mean to break the fourth wall here, but even if our podcast never gets the attention that we would like it to have, I just know that I'm at the right place at the right time because these books are so salient in our lives that they're helping me reflect on things that are happening daily. They're helping me process what's going on, and they teach me about my shortcomings. And I guess that's my ode to contemporary fiction, but I would recommend this book under those circumstances.
I agree. Should we hop into spoilers, or is there anything else that you wanted to
Yeah.
touch?
No, I'm ready for spoilers. Okay, I have to start with the first one.
Okay,
You
wait,
know
hold
I
up.
do this.
So
Okay.
this is your official
Oh,
spoiler
yes.
warning. If you don't want to hear spoilers, we will see you in the next one. Yes, you've been warned. Okay, go ahead.
Yes,
Sorry.
goodbye. Just like in a lot of books, I can't help but get caught up in the vocabulary. And as soon as I saw that these were the tyrants, the tyrannish, I immediately knew that these were the tyrants because
Okay.
they are tyrannical. And so it was immediate for me, and I was already starting to be suspicious right off the bat. Yeah. What about you? What did you think when you first started?
Oh my goodness. When I first started, I wasn't sure where to start, like what to think. Overall, just on this book, I love that the author had the willingness to create this lush world only to just destroy it, essentially. I thought that was really, really cool to see.
At the beginning of every chapter, there's this little almost religious prose, religious doctrine. It references books that we never see, which are written like the Bible. And so that's at the beginning of every chapter. And so it sort of informs what's going on in each chapter in a sort of religious doctrine way. I
Right.
just wanted to put that out there.
I also loved that the overall arching religion has two different sects, right?
Yes.
There's like the Leonites who just stick to what Leon said, and then there's like another offshoot that can like do things a little differently, which I again felt very similar to how religious factions break off in our real world. I thought that was
Right.
really interesting. And yeah, so talking about when we first start the book, that first chapter had me hooked. It like sank its teeth into me, and I was like, wow, the stakes are so high. So what's happening is essentially Thommel's tribe is making what's known as the crossing, where they're all trying to run across this frozen expanse of land to make it to the barrier of Tiran. Because what's happening is there's something going on called the blight, which is killing animals, it's killing plants, it's killing people. So their resources are getting more and more scarce, and also their people are kind of being picked off one by one. So, as a last ditch attempt at survival, essentially, the entire tribe runs to try to make it into the border. And unfortunately, out of, I think there's like 40 of them to start with, only Thommel and his niece, Kara, make it.
And the blight is sort of something that unravels human body and animals. And so, and it's indiscriminatory. So you'll just be like hanging out and then your hand will start coming apart. And so it's very difficult for the Quinn people to understand what's happening. It just seems like it's a blight. It's just like a curse. And there's a lot of religious wording around that.
Right. And even though it's a very gory and graphic thing that's happening, the way that it's written is actually kind of beautiful. Spools and threads of muscle and tendon. So it doesn't feel as, I want to say, visceral or like body horror or gory as it could because of the prose. Like
Right. Yeah.
they even describe what's left behind as looking like red flowers blooming on the snow. So it's
Right.
very beautiful. I don't know. It's kind of
Right. And
strange.
that, just since you're talking about it now, I did want to talk about the way that the author writes the character. We sort of slide between Siona's own opinions, Siona's perceived understanding of things, and then sort of a third view that's just sort of a someone telling the story, someone stepping outside of Siona. You'll hear a couple things like there's a point where Siona says, Siona throws like a girl. And it's very like in that point, you're kind of like, who is saying that? Is Siona think she throws like a girl, or are we being told this story through a third person? And it kind of slides between those three for me, which I thought was the author and Sciona become one and the same at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, I thought that was really interesting as well.
Because she does it at a point where in the book later, where you're like, oh my gosh, it's devastating when suddenly she leaves Siona's point of view behind. And you're like, it kind of catches you. And so I hadn't seen an author be so fluid like that with their character.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then it swaps over to Siona's point of view of the same thing. And she's an
Oh,
archmage
wait, hold
on.
on really
Yeah, go ahead.
quickly before we hop over there. Yeah, I think that there's like the last little part of that first chapter where Thummel decides to call Kara his daughter because there's a religious doctrine that says that they can't be separated from their offspring. So he decides to call Kara his daughter because the guards at the barrier are essentially threatening to throw them back out into the snow and into the blight because they don't think that he's going to be able to work. Here, if you're a Quen and you aren't able to work, then you might as well be dead. There's no use for you in that society, which I think really sets up how brutal the society really is
Right.
before we switch POVs.
Right. Yeah. And so, yeah. And in that way, swapping over to Siona's point of view was confusing because you basically get one chapter of the truth and then you move on into this Bright Haven, which is this place where everyone is flocking to that saves them from the blight. But it comes with a price. You must adopt their ways and you must leave behind your religion, your understanding, and your standing within that community to come into Tehran where Quinn are next to nothing.
Right. And they also use that religious superiority to justify that, saying that the reason that they were gifted with this bright haven is essentially that they are God's chosen people. Their God told their prophet to do this, to build the city, because he foresaw the blight coming before it actually started. And so they offered to allow other people to come, but other people were like, no, we're cool living in our own societies, worshiping our own deities, living lives and having the culture that we've always known. So it's again very, very similar to modern day times and how religion is often used to mistreat marginalized groups.
And so we open up with Siona taking her test to become an archmage. When we start out, she's taking her first exam, which again, like we said, is really helpful because they explain everything that's happening in the exam. And we get to see Siona's relationship with her aunt and her cousin, Aunt Winnie, and her cousin Elba. And yeah, so we get to see that exam. I started to get flashbacks during that for undergrad. Wang has captured this like apprehensive but vivid moment in a young person's life very well, where you're just sort of like of a single mind. I just need to finish this. I just need to finish this. And Siona becomes the first female, well, she becomes the only current female archmage on the council.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. And they have this moment where they announce her and they say, Siona the First. And it reminded me of Sophia the First from the Disney princesses. And I was
So
spinning around going, Siona the First.
I love it. Yeah, there's that scene where they ask her to move this incredibly large object, and the other like archmages are talking to each other like, are you sure this is a good idea? Like, I don't really know. And still they make her do it. And then later, I feel like knowing how much energy that needed to be moved, it's like recontextualized. You're just like, oh my God, holy
Yeah,
cannoli.
I know there's a couple moments where, yeah, like I said, it's uncomfortable to be Siona because I think parts of it are so familiar that you catch little things where you're like, oh, and we're 20 years old again.
Right. Yes.
She kind of berates herself throughout the book. There's a line where she says the most selfish, unwomanly thing that she has said all day. And that kind of, stabbed me through and through but of course, to be selfless is to be a woman, a trait never levied on a man.
Yes, it is interesting that how she attributes her pride and her ego as like male traits.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of internalized misogyny, a lot of just externalized contextual misogyny. It's pretty rampant, even more so than I feel like it is in modern day academia. I don't know. Get back to me on that one. Maybe
Right.
that's
It
not
was so
true.
heartbreaking too for her to be like, I thought that once I got to this upper echelon, we would all just be so excited about the same thing that it wouldn't matter. But it's like, no, she's entered the boys' club and she's very much not welcome there.
Right. And that is such an it was an emotional ride for me. That little subplot was, and yeah, and we'll talk about it as we go, but it kind of got me at times.
Yeah. I'm
What
sorry.
did you think about Sciona and Tommel meeting and working together?
So I thought that was really interesting. So the way that that happens is that
Siona's being abused.
there's a group of Cyanu's colleagues who a couple of them are legacy hires, one of who's Jaron Mordra, I think his name is. It's pretty obvious that he doesn't really belong there. He's not very good at what he does, but of course he's going to get the job, sort of a deal. Again, because it's like his father and his father's father and his father's father before him have all been in this prestigious institute. So of course it's going to go down to him as well. But anyway,
Patriarchy. Yeah.
they're all kind of hanging out in the hallway. And Sienna is looking for where she needs to be. She's looking for her laboratory. And it's actually interesting because the first time she sees Thommel, she notices him because he's the janitor and he's sweeping the floor. And she's like, "Oh, there's a Quen. He probably doesn't even speak like the common tongue. I need to look for a real person, so someone who can help me." A real person was like the exact lineage there, which I was
Mm.
like, oh, that was like the first kind of like, where I was like, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
And I actually wrote a note in my Kindle when we first are introduced to Clean Renthorn saying, if this is the love interest, I'm done. Because I'm so jaded by the enemies to lovers. I'm like, please no, please.
Right.
I
Yeah.
simply
And it's
cannot.
right. I agree completely. Yeah. I felt like I was on high alert for that as well. Early on in the book, there's a point where one of the other high mages tries to suggest that Siona got as far as she did by basically sleeping with her professors and higher
That
ups
was
along the way.
Renthorn. That was
Is it
Renthorn.
is
It's
it is
always
it
Renthorn.
Renthorn? Yeah. And she doesn't even entertain it. She just shuts that down entirely. And you kind of got this feeling that there wasn't going to be a romantic aspect in the book. That she's sort of like she's just prickly. And so I was kind of enjoying that. I was happy to take a break from romance by forced proximity, I think.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. She's not only prickly, but she's also like laser focused.
Right. Yes.
So,
Which
but
agreed. Yeah.
yes, but I'm taking us like all the ways around. I'm so sorry. But
No,
the
no.
way that they end up working together is that there's this group of colleagues, Renthorn, Jaren, and a couple other people. They're hanging out in the hallway, and Siona bumps into them. They're kind of bullying her, letting her know that she's definitely not welcome in the boys' club. She can definitely not sit with them at lunch, but she's trying to figure out where her lab is, and it comes up that she needs an assistant. So, as essentially a joke, Renthorn grabs Thommel, who is, again, the janitor. He's just sweeping, and he's like, here you go, here's your assistant. Making fun of Thommel, he's making fun of Siona, he's belittling both of them in one fell swoop. But instead of letting Renthorn see that he's getting under her skin, Siona decides that she's just going to work with Thommel and she's still going to do a better job than Renthorn, who, by the
Yeah.
way, has like 5 assistants.
Yeah, right. And you don't really get the feeling that like Siona is super excited to work with Tommel. You get the feeling like she's like, well, just another thing to prove to my colleagues that I can do
Exactly.
this with even a Quinn.
Exactly.
Yeah, and there's a lot of power imbalance between Siona and Tommel. Even when they go and have drinks together in the city, it feels like she's looking down at him, down on even the Quinn bar that they go to. And yeah, she's just deeply unlikable as she's
Right.
very uncomfortable during that part.
Yeah, at first she's almost no, at first she is offended that he would even suggest to buy her a drink. And then she thinks that she's going to offer to buy him a drink, but luckily she's like, "Oh, well maybe that would offend him actually." So again, it kind of is miserable to be in Siona's head.
Right. Yeah. It actually, in that moment, kind of reminded me of probably, I mean, like, I wouldn't know, but probably what like a modern day dating scene would be like. Like, should I buy that? Do I afford that? Like, I don't know how that would work. And so it kind of felt, again, really analogous to modern day. But
Seriously.
fairly quickly, Tomold reveals that all of the prior Quinn high mages were women. And Sciona says, well, I should have read that somewhere. It doesn't take Tommel any time at all to start unraveling what he sees behind the scenes in Siona's lab. And so she says, no, 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 she's the one that knows everything. That's the thing that Siona wants you to know, is that she knows everything. And so she kind of dismisses him like, no, I would have read that if Quinn were high mages. And he just sort of stops point blank and looks at her and says, would you? And as soon as he did that, I just kicked off my shoes. I turned it up. We got ourselves a cover up of massive proportions, everyone. And so it was really fun. I really liked the big reveal with Tommel and the beginning of unraveling this very evil sweater.
Right. And every time I felt like Siona would talk about Brigham, or Brigham would come around, and Tommel always kind of made these like snide comments about him. And I was like, oh, Tommel knows something, and Tommel's right about him. Like, something's up with this guy. I just know
Right.
it.
Yeah.
What are you up to?
And pretty quickly after that, we get introduced to Kara, which is Tommald's niece. And I love Kara. She's an excellent character. She is what every young woman, like at least some part of every young woman should be, just not letting anybody get away with anything. You've got to keep everybody accountable, and she takes care of herself.
She is so sharp and pointed, and I also love her. I'm curious. So she brings up, the character of Kara brings up this I think dilemma that a lot of indigenous cultures have, of preserving their culture versus assimilating into the prevalent culture to make their lives easier, or to make their offspring's lives easier, so that they can kind of seamlessly assimilate. And I did like that, Kara and Tommel are essentially the last of the are essentially the last of the Caldone. And I did like that she was so fiery and so strong.
Right. Yeah. And don't let us forget to tell you what happens here. The big reveal is that we find out in Siona's lab that the magic that they're doing, all the spells that they cast, everything that runs the city, to turn on the water, every spell that Siona cast to brush her teeth, to do her exam, they all are the blight. The magic is the blight. You see in the spells, we know that there's an object, a action, and then something that sources the energy and pulls it from somewhere else. And we find out through Tommel's light poking that they've been sourcing all that energy from where the Quinn were originally and stealing it from their people, their land, their plants. And that's the big secret.
And there's also a sacred coordinate section that you can never, they call it siphoning. You can never siphon from that area. And they very easily put that together, that is the barrier. That's terrain. And on top of it all, there's something called like a reserve, which is constantly siphoning. So just from like the most mundane, if anything crosses it, it's just going to kind of pick up that energy just in case. And that is the roughly like couple miles, the border between Tehran and the Quen. So that's what the Quen call the crossing. And a little bit later too, when she's talking to Brigham about this, she kind of gets the feeling that not only is the border there to keep Tehran protected from the blight, but it's also to keep the Quen out, because they don't want a bunch of Quen being able to make it through the crossing and into the city.
They've seen too much, and the more that they get together, they're going to put it together that that's what the blight is. And I'm sure they already have a lot
And
of
of
them.
course, that like ties us right into our own society today, capitalism, and how there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. Energy has to come from somewhere. We know that even for the microchips in our cell phones, in our computers, atrocities are happening to other people that we can't see, to them over there across the world, that it doesn't affect us. And we get to live these cushy lives and have all of the niceties that we have, because we turn a blind eye to the reality of
Right.
where everything comes from.
Right.
Under these systems, nobody's hands are clean. All of our hands are dirty. We're all complicit. We're all mass murderers.
Right. Yeah. And that's exactly what Kara says. She puts it very eloquently. She says it's a whole group of mass murderers. As soon as Sciona appears in their home, Kara tells her point blank, "You're either evil or you're stupid." And honestly, that line hits so hard in 2026 because I don't think I'm evil.
But we are Sciona.
We are Sciona. Yeah. And so there was a lot of lessons in this book.
Absolutely. Hard ones,
Right.
hard truths to look at.
Right.
Lots of mirrors being put in
Quite a
front of
bit.
us. Yeah.
And right after we kind of like come to this hard-hitting character, the author makes a point to let you know this is a huge interaction happening in their home. I noticed immediately when Sciona left the home that the point of view did not leave with her. And that was the first time I remember in the book that the point of view did not follow Sciona, although we had hints at it, maybe being told from an outside perspective. When I saw how easily the author left Sciona behind, I kind of got this squelchy feeling in my stomach because of the way that the story was going.
Yes, as we were approaching the end, I was like, I fear this is not going to work out.
I fear where's the pages I need
Yes,
to resolve
exactly.
this.
This is a standalone.
Yeah. I did want to touch on one of the things that I thought was the most interesting in the book, which is what I thought was more interesting. And one of the things that I really liked about the book, one thing I found very interesting, is that Tomold's God's view of humanity. So, what do our listeners think? Does intention matter? And how much? If you intend to do a good thing, but only bring about destruction, does it absolve you of that destruction? And therefore, if you intend harm, but provide relief in some way, are you absolved of your intention? We're quite literally talking about the difference between manslaughter and murder. The question is so fascinating to me. I think in that way, if it were true, if you agree with that, you can make a logical argument that the only measure of anything, what you have done, what you have intended, what someone else has done, what someone else has intended, is the outcome. Or conversely, that no matter what you have done, you were not responsible. It really plays like what you said in our last episode with this idea of intent versus outcome and where the responsibility lies. And I don't know if I have a good answer to that. I don't know. And I would love to hear from somebody else about it.
Any philosophy majors in
This
our
is plaguing
listenership?
me. It's just a fiction book.
But it's so good. That's why we love these books, because they make us think and they
Oh, it's so good.
expand our brains and our worldviews.
Yeah, I love it so much. Yeah, another part that I loved was after the sexual assault that happens, Halaros comes in and says that he's going to take Sciona to the train. And she's like, "No, you are an insipid idiot and your prose is trash." And honestly, I was cracking up so hard because that situation is so relatable where something has gone awry and you don't really have like the words to put it into what's happening yet, but you've got this other argument already on deck for another situation at a different time, but it just so happens to present itself in that moment. And so you just go into this unconscious mode of like, well, I got this one rehearsed and this one's for you. And it's just poetry. I actually do some of my best work in that moment. So,
Yeah, our girl is not hanging on well. There was
yeah,
also a touch. We get touched on women's health. So it's after her and Thomel figure out exactly what the blight is and where magic comes from. And she, whoopsie doopsie, accidentally maybe kills a girl like across the world because she just needs to see it for herself. And she's spiraling, right? So she very quickly like goes home and she's not doing well at all. And her aunt apparently is calling an alchemist. And the alchemists in this world deal with matter and they're kind of like physicians as well. And is what the vibe that I got. But they touched on how essentially if Sciona didn't like get her shit together, they would lobotomize her, like give her like a magical lobotomy essentially, which again I thought was fascinating that she pulled that specifically. But it feeds into this whole patriarchal structure. If a woman is too emotional, the only way to deal with it is to get her
hysterical.
to hysterical, is to get her to be docile like one way or another, whether that's through medication or a physical lobotomy.
Right. And you see Sciona rage against that and you rage with her as the reader. You sort of, I definitely found myself like getting angry. There's this part where Sciona realizes that her mentor easily believes that she doesn't care about the Quinn or the other people. And she questions this when she realizes that it's because she's given no indication that she does. There's this
Right.
slow dawn of realization that she may have been blinded to all of the pain that she's caused because she was so set on her achievement and proving that she could do it without realizing the consequences. Ah, that part just killed me to realize that, you
Absolutely.
know?
Oh, but
Siona
really
comes
quick,
up with it.
you kind of brought something else up for me is that we also find out that everybody, all of the higher ups in the
Right.
magistry, they all
Yeah,
know where magic comes from. A lot
right.
of them, like the newer recruits and things like that, they don't really know. And essentially, it's just like a faux pas to talk about it. It's not really something that's discussed. It's kind of like in poor taste. And when Sayona, I thought it was so funny because, of course, Thamel and Kara are like, no, they know. Like, what do you mean? Of course they
Right,
know.
right. Yeah,
And
right.
Sayona's like, no, like, I'm the most brilliant. I am the only one
Right.
who's discovered this. They can't possibly know.
Right. Yeah. She realizes that yeah, that she's fought so hard against this system that it's hardened her. And in the attempt to remain strong in the face of the misogyny and the patriarchy and just proving that she could do it, she herself has become part of the system. She
Right.
has
I love
stepped
that.
on Elba as a young woman, taking from her, and she describes multiple times resenting the women around her rather than appreciating their quiet fight and their quiet resolve, their quiet maintenance of the status quo that just slightly tips it in their favor, the slow wheels of justice. Siona disregards that. She upends this and blindly loses what progress they had made. I deeply resonate with this sentiment. I think a lot about I'm sorry. I think a lot of young women and young men don't realize the sacrifice it takes to come forward when something is wrong. I applaud it. That's why we believe victims. They risk everything to tell the truth, and most oftentimes they lose everything to expose it. And I think that although we appreciate that in Siona and everything that she did, I think that she stepped on so many people to get there. I'm not sure she learned the lesson, and it cost everyone so much.
Yes, there is. Yes. So there's that beautiful quote in the book that says, in refusing to be a stepping stone, she had made herself a boot.
Right.
So
And
good.
yes, and just remember that in these books and often time in life, the difference between winning and losing is whether you have friends. It's
Yeah.
just like, it's just you step on so
Yeah.
many people sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Siona never once questions whether the people around her, her Aunt Winnie or Elba, know anything. She just assumes everyone to be fools. And
And she also assumes that if they were to know the truth, they would be outraged. They would care. They would want something to change about the status quo.
right, right. And I think that that pursuit, even at the cost of people you love, in a way, the book highlights a lot of the problems with microscopically applying feminism. It only can, if you microscopically approve it, can only better women. And so a lot is cut.
And in this world, again, it's not intersectional feminism. It's very much like white feminism, right? It's not
Very much.
because
Yeah,
that's not affecting the Quen women of the city at all.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And so I think it was just such a good lesson to see in real time what happens when you have the ability to microscopically apply feminism, how much is still left out and how much room there still is to apply it intersectionally, as you said.
Yeah. Yes. So,
There's one more thing I wanted to say. There's this part where Kara is talking to Siona. The name of the chapter is Girl Talk. And Kara says to her, is talking about her mother. And she says, and my mother's dead because of you and your magical boyfriends. And there's so much tongue in cheek that come out of the Quinn that I thought that character was really fun.
right. So, Siona and Kara and Pommel are kind of tentatively working together. Siona's coming up with a plan, but we as the reader aren't super informed on what's happening. Again, looking at the page length, we're like, I don't know if we're going to have a happy ever
Like,
after.
yeah, it's almost over.
Right. But essentially, she wants to reveal her big plan and her findings at what's happening. Her big first assignment is that Tehran wants to do a barrier expansion, which is going to require an insanely large amount of energy to source. So they're trying, like, this society supposedly has been here for about 300 years and they need more space. So what's happening is Sciona and her colleagues are all looking for different ways to source the energy for the expansion. So Siona's decided that she's going to reveal her findings. She's created what she's calling a Freynan. How do you pronounce her last name? Freynan?
Freynan, yeah. Sciona Freynan.
Freynan mirror, which is a very clear picture of exactly where the energy is sourced from, so they can see for themselves what's happening when they siphon.
And oopsie, she starts a war. And
So,
it really does feel like that in the book. It's
right,
like one
yes,
day and then it's oopsie. Because
yes,
you're sort of in that world with her where you're like, this is the right thing to do. And then you see everything falling apart after she reveals everything because the truth is a lot of people knew.
right. And just to have it confirmed, and again, she didn't really think about the Quen and how they would respond, even though
Right.
Kara and Thamel told her this is a terrible idea.
Begged her.
Yes, the Quen completely rebel. So essentially, what Sciona does is she lets everybody in the meeting know, like, what's up and where magic's coming from. And they're all just like, wow, I told you a woman couldn't handle the truth. This is this burden of knowledge that we carry for the good of society, right? Which is so despicable and so
So
infuriating, right?
yeah, that rage was really coming up again at the end.
Yes, but not only is she sharing her findings with the council, she has created these mirrors to pop up all over the city of Tehran. So anytime somebody turns on a light, drives a car, shoots a gun, a little portal pops up to show them exactly where that energy is coming from, and it's bloody and it's gruesome and the carnage is being displayed all over the city and people are losing their minds.
It's just
Realistically, as you
endless.
would.
Yeah. Yeah, it's endless. And her family is so mad at her. This is when her Aunt Winnie comes to her and Elba come to her and they're just like, you never saw us. You
Right. Well,
never
no, Winnie
realized.
won't even visit her. It's
Right. That's
just
right.
Alba that
It's
comes.
just
Yeah.
Elba.
So
Yeah.
essentially, everyone's like, no, Siona is imprisoned. And yes, Winnie comes and visits her, or Alba comes and visits her. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
Yeah. So Alba comes and visits her. And also, what did you think of that? Because I was disappointed, but not surprised by Alba's reaction. She very
Yeah.
much does not want the status quo to be rippled and disturbed.
Yeah. I think it's like I said, that there's just, I think that when it's white savior again, but also just, because I think a requirement of white savior is to just die in the end, to just unravel. You have to be unraveled in order for it to be complete, the saving to be complete. And so I think that she sacrifices herself in a way that's reckless. I think her family sees that everything that she has done is reckless. She's a bridge burner. That entire interaction made me wince. I understand the feeling of the men and all the damage in her wake. They're slack-jawed. She has scorched the earth. It's such a glorious feeling after such a long winter that Siona has endured that she feels justified. But again, Elba and Winnie have lost everything. There will no longer be another female mage. All of their slow progress has been lost. And I think that hit me like a ton of bricks because I do think I barrel forward the same way as Siona does to be right because I am right and I want to exact it upon them. And yeah, it actually reminds me of an old quote, if you don't mind if I take a second to find it.
Please do.
It's a quote that I think often embodies my feminine rage. It says, but most of them cannot own up to their own fear. So they take comfort in the certainty of moral judgments, with which they brandish like burning branches waved in the night to keep off the wolves. She needed to be right, and she needed those who felt differently to be in the wrong. Her own conviction was not enough. She wanted their wrongness to be proclaimed upon them in court. But there is no right and wrong to loss, to grief. The pain is circular. It is its own fulfillment. Summoning the strength to break out of it is the struggle that is faced. That's by Richard Lloyd Perry. And I just think that I was surprised by Elba's response, just as I'm sure Siona was. And I
Right.
think I learned that lesson in real time with Siona.
Yeah.
Because how could being right be wrong,
Right. Of course.
you know?
Yeah.
But then you see that it cost them everything.
Yeah. The city's being destroyed. Again, like we said, the Quen are
It's over.
rioting.
Yeah.
Everything's on fire. The
Yeah.
Quen are being round up and like shot in the streets. It's anarchy. It's complete anarchy. She has disrupted the system completely. But just like you were saying, and like I was saying in the beginning of this episode, where I fear what she did was short-sighted, where we hope that there is actual progress and change, but it's not guaranteed. Maybe there will be never another female mage. Maybe she will be another kind of abstract footnote in the history books.
Right. And as the Quinn are fleeing the city, the author leaves us with a great quote. I wanted to finish it out because I feel like I couldn't
Wait,
capture
really
the ending
quick.
of the book. Sure, go ahead.
We're not quite there just because.
Sure. We need
So I did
Renthorn stuff. Yeah.
I know we need to yeah, really quickly. So then there is the trial. She is there and they present her with a vial of poison that she's going to drink. And as soon as she drank it, I was like, "Oh no." No, like it's
I was like,
like
wait, how
what?
do we undo that?
Wait, what do you mean?
She just drank it.
But then the room, like, they're like, do you have any lost words? And the room starts shaking and the blight starts taking place within the room because what Sciona has done is that she has sourced the energy for the expansion and she's sourced it from the magic center and everybody inside it and everybody in the close vicinity of it, and people are figuring out what's happening. They're trying to run over each other. She's describing watching her mentors just fall apart in shreds. She's describing because
Evaporate.
what's that?
I said they're sort of evaporating. There's wisps of them coming off.
Right. And the drug that she took is a paralytic, and so she's numb. And so she describes that looking at her own body unravel in a scientific way, which I thought was very interesting. And we find out that in order to actually like get the spell to process, she needed somebody else to do it. So Kara and Thomel, I think this is where ML Wang tried to save the white savior trope, essentially put it in the hands of the Quen, whether or not they wanted this huge essentially explosion to happen and all of this destruction. And Kara's like, yeah, burn it down. So, yes, so that happens. We get a little flashback moment where it's Siona's what she thinks is going to be her last night alive. And she's talking with Thomel for the last time. She actually asks Thomel if she can stay there with him because she decides that it's like her last night and she wants to spend it with him, but she does end up leaving and going home. But they share a kiss together, which I thought was very sweet. And I also thought that the writing around it, there was a line talking about how Thomel could never truly belong to a tyrannish woman.
Mm-hmm.
Sciona could never belong to any man without losing an essential part of themselves, which I thought was so interesting. I thought that these were truly star-crossed or doomed lovers.
Right.
There's not enough time for them to cross the ocean that it would take to actually meet each other where they need to, but they want to and they see something in each other. I did find the little subtle hints of romance between them, the kind of lingering glances, the slow forming of going from kind of like not really thinking of Hummel even as a real person to him being an essential part of her process. I thought was very sweet to see. And I thought that that whole subplot was really lovely.
Yeah, I agree. And I like that she left out the eventual love besides a kiss because I think that that's more realistic. I don't think that
Right.
they were either of them are able to abandon their beliefs. Just like you said, Siona to the very moment was a scientist watching herself unravel. She never let the moment take her in a spiritual way, in an emotional way. She just science to the end.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what she was. She was in pursuit of truth to the end. And that
Absolutely.
can be the cost at the end. That can be the outcome.
But then also still sometimes falling back on her own belief systems, like when they got into that big fight. And at the end of the day, she was like, "You're out of line. You can't speak to me like that." And she knows that he can't because she can
Right.
have him fired, murdered, anything. Even the scene with Renthorn, and he comes in, and then her colleagues are immediately like, Renthorn was trying to protect you from Thomel, wasn't he? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so frustrating. It's a tale as old as time, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it was portrayed so well. There's so much that I could talk about this book, and I feel like so much
Right.
more that's going to come up for me.
Right.
And
Me
we'd love
too.
to hear from you guys. Please let us know if there's anything that we kind of missed out on. We definitely have to touch on Renthorn's death because that was very satisfying.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, do you want to talk about Renthorn's death?
Sure, yeah. So, like I had mentioned earlier, Siona needs somebody to start the spell that's going to siphon the magic center. So Thomal and Kara are back at their apartment in the Quen Quarter, and they're kind of finishing things up. They're watching mayhem unfold from a safe distance. And Renthorn and Jaren Mordra end up showing up because we find out that Renthorn has somehow put it together. Like he's been keeping an eye on what Sciona is researching and what she's up to, and the events that are taking place with her. And he's put together. He's got a hunch that she's gonna do something. Something's gonna go down at this trial. So him and Jaren Mordra aren't there. And Renthorn is on this real power trip talking about how now they're the only two high mages in the city, and he's going to be the Archmage Supreme, and Mordra is going to be his willing disciple. And, he's kind of freaking out. But Renthorn also tracked down Thomal because he knows that somebody had to use what they call the spellograph to start the spell. So Thomal has told Kara that she should get going, so she's kind of going away with the spellograph. She's like scurried off, like they're on I think it's like the water tower that they hang out on.
Right.
And they're getting into a scuffle. Essentially, it gets to the point where we're pretty sure that Thomal is going to die, and all of a sudden Kara drops the spellograph onto Renthorn's head from like the story above, and he just like splats with, it's like a sickening crunch or something like that, and then he's like, his body's twitching a little bit. It's very, very satisfying.
And it's the spellograph that Sciona had taken out of the ministry and fixed, and so it's sort of got like everybody's fingerprints on it, so to speak.
Right,
they
absolutely.
shouldn't have it. Sciona made it. Yeah, it's sort of a everybody was involved in the end.
Right,
moment.
And they sort of threaten Mordra, telling him that now that he knows the truth, he is the only high mage and he will be the Archmage Supreme, and that he needs to do what's right, or what, I'm not really sure.
Or be off the list, I bet.
But they're leaving, so it's not like they're like, we'll find you. Give me your driver's license. I'm going to check on you in 5 years or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, I did find that Renthorn and Mordra were interesting foils for each other, where one of them was a little bit, he wasn't aware of the cruelty that was happening, but he probably would have just gone along with the status quo, not to ruffle any feathers, keep things pushing, keep things the way that they're going. Whereas Renthorn was like actually a sadist and was really into the fact that the magic was destroying people in other places, and he wanted to see it, and don't you get off on the power of it too? I know you do. It's very strange. But I did find those two characters to be, like I said, a good foil for one another.
Yeah, it felt like everybody was like every other one was deeply evil, and then the other one was stupid. And so it would just be like, and I think it did kind of bring into that idea of like what happens when good people just stand by and watch terrible things happen. We're all sort of complicit because in a way, even Aunt Winnie and Elba, everybody is complicit in making the system work. We all have to buy into it, even the Quinn. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Yes. I think you'll probably end it on a higher note than this one. Just speaking of the Quen, another little criticism that I have, there's a mass exodus that happens at the end because the barrier's down. And so the Quen have been in the city. They're like, we get treated like trash here. We're going to go take our chances back out in the wilderness, essentially. And they all kind of unite together, and they're moving, and they're kind of becoming one tribe, which I thought was written very well. But I also, it's not realistic at all, because after 300 years, there's got to be Quen that are like, I was born here. This is the only life I've known. Right. And also like Quen that are like half Quen, half Tyrannish. Like that is a thing that would have definitely happened over 300 years. So I felt like that was a little.
Yeah, a little simple. Yeah. A little wrap it up at the end there,
Yeah.
Yeah, but I did think she left us with a good, hopeful moment, like you said. This is when the Quen are leaving the city, and it says, Tamal had always understood that it wasn't Kara alone he had borne across the lake 10 years ago. Now he understood that it hadn't been the Kaldane alone either. We are one people with one purpose, but the we was more than the Kaldane, more than any coalitions of the tribes. It was Eris pushing Maeva a little farther than he had gone. Maeva pushing Tamal a little farther than she had gone. Tama pushing Kara a little farther than he expected to go. Even Sciona Freynan giving her life to push them both a little farther still. Maybe like so many of the people he had loved, Tama wouldn't live to see the dawn. Maybe Kara wouldn't. Maybe it would be 100 generations before the sun rose on a life of dignity for their descendants. But the worthwhile run was not the sprint.
I love it.
And yeah, and I think that kind of speaks a little bit to like Elba and Winnie and why they were so angry, because it's just that little inch that you have to do. And refusing to do that little inch is what keeps everyone behind. And just going
Right.
that little bit further, doing the right thing when you have an easy choice.
Yeah. Uh,
I
okay,
love it.
really, really quick before we wrap up, I'll probably like insert this somewhere else because that was a great way to end this.
Yeah.
But what did you think of Brigham as a character and like a villain?
I mean, I thought he was, who he kind of reminded me was of the priest guy in Game of Thrones, where he pretends to be like real old and kind of like, oh, I'm so decrepit. But actually, he's like an evil mastermind. That kind of reminded me of Brigham, because he's obviously, I don't know if it says it explicitly in the book, that he's a small, I kind of got like an older man with maybe a cane or something, and that he was just very fatherly. And so I think he hid behind that fatherly disposition to keep everyone thinking that he wasn't evil and that he didn't know what was going on. What do you think?
I thought he was such an interesting villain, so layered and complex with everything happening in his factories. And he is this very proud employer of women, but yet he knows that the women, the dyes that they use in his factories lead to infertility. So it's again just like it just feels so reminiscent of like our modern day villains where they're
Right.
like, oh, look at all the good that I do, like look at
The
all of the
father
money that I
figure.
donate to
Right.
charity. And then meanwhile, it's like that so you could write it off, like that sort of I don't know.
Right. And not to like bring it back to the Epstein files, but that's kind of, it's a little analogous to that, right? Because we've got these people who act very fatherly, act very, just come under here, come under this wing and I'll take care of you. And really it's just a cell
That's,
door of abuse. That
yep,
wing is exactly the thing that they protect you with, is exactly the thing that's keeping you under their control. And yeah, I thought it was a really realistic character. I mean, he made me so uncomfortable that I was just like, ew, get away from him. Because
same.
he's bad.
He's,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, for sure.
bad guy.
Bad guy. Overall, I think that this one was so pointed and critical and really talked about systems of oppression in a way that was digestible and easy to understand.
I agree. Yeah, I really loved the book. And I think that it's a good lesson for anyone to challenge some of the beliefs they have on either side.
Absolutely. I think that covers up everything we wanted to touch on about this incredible book. But if there's something that you think we missed, please let us know in the comments.
Yeah, give us another reason to have one more episode on this book.
Sure.
And did you read this book? What do you think? What other books would you recommend to someone who loved Blood Over Brighthaven? We'd love to know.
If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love to have you join our digital book club by subscribing on YouTube and finding us on all social media at Basically Bookish Pod.
Thanks so much for spending part of your day with us, especially if you made it this far into the episode. And if you did make it this far, leave us some sort of red or black emoji in the comments to let us know.
Until next time.
Happy reading!